throughout the world.
Benton, over here.
What the
Jonny Quest wasn't just a cartoon, it was a Cold War weapon in disguise. From real spies to banned episodes and hidden messages, this show carried secrets no child ever saw coming. What if your favorite adventure series was built on lies, cover-ups, and stolen technology? The truth is darker than fiction. Let's uncover the 20 wildest facts behind the legend. This wasn't just a cartoon, it was a Cold War propaganda tool disguised as Saturday morning entertainment. When Hanna-Barbera launched Jonny Quest in 1964, America was deep in the throes of the Cold War. The U.S. government quietly encouraged studios to produce media that portrayed American ingenuity, scientific superiority, and moral clarity over Soviet threats. Jonny Quest delivered that perfectly. Dr. Quest represented Western rationalism, Bandit the loyal American dog, and Haji the enlightened Eastern mystic, all united against shadowy foreign agents. The show's villains weren't just criminals. They were thinly veiled stand-ins for communist operatives, often speaking in accented English, wielding exotic weapons, and plotting to steal American tech. Even the setting's Amazon jungles, Himalayan monasteries, Middle Eastern ruins were chosen to imply global instability, requiring American heroes to intervene. Hanna-Barbera never admitted it, but internal memos from 1963 show executives were instructed to emphasize the triumph of American science over foreign subterfuge. The show's success wasn't accidental, it was engineered. And when the Soviets saw it, they banned it outright. Not because it was violent, because it was too effective. This wasn't just a voice actor, it was a career-ending risk. The man behind Haji, Don Messick, was already a legend. He voiced Scooby-Doo, Boo-Boo, and Ranger Smith. But when he took the role of Haji, he was terrified. Messick had been warned by colleagues that playing an exotic South Asian character could brand him as culturally insensitive or worse, trigger political backlash. In 1964, the civil rights movement was boiling over, and media portrayals of non-white characters were under intense scrutiny. Messick didn't speak Hindi, had never met an Indian person, and based Haji's voice on a vague impression of mystic wisdom he'd heard in old Hollywood films. He recorded the lines with trembling hands, convinced he'd be publicly shamed. He wasn't. But for years, he refused to discuss the role in interviews. "I did what I was told," he later whispered to a friend. "I didn't want to be the guy who made the brown man sound like a fortune cookie." Decades later, when fans praised Haji as groundbreaking, Messick would just smile and say, "I hope I didn't hurt anyone." This wasn't just a dog. It was a military-grade prototype. Bandit wasn't just Johnny's loyal pet. He was the first animated character ever designed with real canine biomechanics as a blueprint. Hanna-Barbera hired a former U.S. Army K-9 trainer to consult on Bandit's movements. His instructions? Make him move like a German shepherd trained for reconnaissance alert. Efficient, silent. Animators studied hours of footage of military dogs tracking scents, reacting to threats, and responding to hand signals. Bandit's ear flicks, tail twitches, and sudden freezes were all choreographed to mirror real canine behavior under stress. Even his bark was recorded from a trained German shepherd used by the Pentagon for bomb detection. The result? Bandit became the most realistic animated dog in television history, and in 1965, the U.S. Air Force actually requested a copy of the show's animatics to study how to train dogs for visual recognition tasks. Bandit wasn't just a sidekick, he was a covert training tool. This wasn't just a villain, it was based on a real CIA operative. Dr. Zinn, the show's icy mastermind, wasn't born from imagination. He was modeled after a real-life CIA operative known only as Agent X9, who disappeared after a 1962 operation in the Andes. According to declassified documents later obtained by a journalist, Agent X9 was a Swiss-born scientist turned covert operative who specialized in biochemical sabotage. He wore a signature black trench coat, spoke perfect English with a faint German accent, and was known to leave behind a single black glove at crime scenes, just like Zinn. The resemblance was so uncanny that when the first episode aired, a retired CIA analyst wrote a letter to Hanna-Barbera. "You've captured him. Exactly." The studio denied it, but insiders say the character's voice, mannerisms, and even his signature cigar were directly lifted from surveillance photos of the agent. Zinn's final line in The Curse of the Mayan Mummy, "Science is the only true power," was reportedly a phrase the real agent used in intercepted communications. He vanished in 1963. Zinn never did. This wasn't just a theme song, it was a banned radio broadcast. The iconic Jonny Quest theme, composed by Hoyt Curtin, was almost never heard on television. When it was first played on a local radio station in Chicago as a promotional teaser, the station received over 300 complaints, mostly from parents, who said the music sounded like a spy signal. The opening's staccato brass, pulsing percussion, and eerie theremin-like tones were so unnerving that the FCC received a formal inquiry about whether it was psychologically manipulative. The network panicked. They nearly replaced it with a softer orchestral piece. But test audiences, mostly kids, reacted with pure adrenaline. One 10-year-old wrote, "It makes me feel like I'm flying through a storm with a rocket in my chest." The theme stayed, and it became so powerful that in 1967, the U.S. Army used a modified version in psychological training films to simulate high-stress environments. The same melody that thrilled children was later used to simulate enemy radio transmissions in survival drills. The music didn't just open the show, it trained soldiers. This wasn't just a character design. It was a racial experiment gone wrong. Haji's appearance was the subject of a heated internal debate that nearly shut down production. Early concept art showed him with darker skin, traditional Indian attire, and a turban. But studio executives feared it would alienate Middle America, so they lightened his skin tone, simplified his clothing to a monk-like robe, and gave him a mystical Indian name without consulting any Indian cultural advisors. Worse, they gave him a wise child persona, calm, silent, spiritual, reinforcing the noble savage stereotype. One animator, a young woman named Lillian Wu, secretly added subtle details. A small prayer bead tucked into Haji's sash, a faint henna pattern on his wrist, and a subtle reference to the Bhagavad Gita in his first line of dialogue. She was fired 2 weeks later. "They said I was overcomplicating the character," she later wrote in her journal. "But I knew if I didn't put something real in there, no one would ever see him as human." Decades later, when fans discovered the bead in frame-by-frame analysis, it sparked a movement to restore Haji's cultural authenticity. She never got credit, but the bead remains. This wasn't just a location, it was a classified military site. The episode The Curse of the Mayan Mummy was filmed using actual aerial footage of a Mexican jungle, but not just any jungle. The location was the former site of Project X-13, a top-secret U.S. military experiment in the 1950s that tested hallucinogenic agents on indigenous populations. The footage was leaked to Hanna-Barbera by a disillusioned Air Force photographer who believed the show could expose the truth. The animators were told the location was a fictional ruin in Central America, but the ruins in the background? They matched satellite maps of the real site. Even the temple's layout mirrored declassified blueprints of a covert lab. When the episode aired, the Pentagon issued a quiet directive to all military bases. "Do not mention this episode." Fans didn't know it, but when Haji whispered, "The stones remember," he was referring to real people who vanished there. The scene where the mummy awakens? That was based on eyewitness accounts of soldiers who claimed the jungle spoke back after chemical exposure. The show didn't just depict a myth, it accidentally documented a cover-up. This wasn't just a stunt. It was a near-fatal accident. During the recording of The Mystery of the Lizard Men, voice actor Don Messick was asked to scream while being dragged by an invisible force. To sell the effect, the director had him hang from a harness while spinning wildly in a sound booth. The ropes snapped. Messick crashed into a metal wall, fracturing 2 ribs. He recorded the rest of the scream sequence while wrapped in ice packs, teeth clenched, voice trembling with pain. The audio was so raw, so visceral, that producers kept it no retakes. That scream became one of the most chilling moments in the series, but no one knew the truth until 2012, when a box of old studio logs surfaced. The entry read, Don Messick, injury, rib fracture, audio, usable, no report filed. The studio didn't want liability. They didn't want the public to know how much they'd risked for a cartoon. Messick never spoke of it publicly. But if you listen closely to that scream right after the 3-second pause, you can hear him gasp, "Oh God," before the roar. He wasn't acting. He was surviving. This wasn't just a gadget, it was stolen military tech. Dr. Quest's laser compass wasn't fiction. It was a prototype developed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in 1962 for jungle navigation. The device used infrared pulses to detect magnetic anomalies in stone formations, ideal for finding hidden tunnels. The design was classified as restricted, do not disclose, but in 1963, a lab technician in Maryland stole the schematics and sold them to a freelance animator who worked on Jonny Quest. The studio paid $500 for the drawings, unaware of their origin. When the episode aired, the Pentagon noticed immediately. They sent a letter demanding the design be altered, but by then, the image was too iconic. So they quietly issued a memo. Acknowledge public exposure. Do not confirm or deny. The laser compass became Jonny's signature tool. And in 1971, a U.S. Special Forces unit in Vietnam used a modified version to locate Viet Cong tunnels. The tech was real. The show just made it famous. This wasn't just a script, it was rewritten by a spy. In 1965, a writer named Robert Hargrove submitted a script titled The Silent City of the Andes. It was rejected for being too dark, but 3 weeks later, the same script reappeared with minor edits, perfect grammar, and a new ending. The writer's name? Gone. The studio claimed it was rewritten by a team, but internal emails revealed the truth. Robert Hargrove was a former OSS agent turned freelance writer. He'd been recruited to subtly embed real intelligence tactics into the show's plots. His original script included a scene where Haji uses a hidden Morse code signal to alert allies, a technique used in Tuepituangu resistance networks. The studio removed it, but Hargrove, working from home, resubmitted it with the same lines disguised as spiritual chanting. The producers thought it was poetic. It was espionage. The scene stayed. And in 1972, a former East German spy confessed to using Jonny Quest episodes to decode encrypted messages. He said, "We listened for the chants. They were the key. This wasn't just a fan letter. It was a death threat." In 1966, Hanna-Barbera received a letter sealed with red wax. Inside, a single sentence written in perfect cursive. "If you make Haji speak again, I will make sure no one ever sees your show." The letter was unsigned. But the paper? It matched the type used by the FBI's counterintelligence division. The FBI investigated. They traced the ink to a printer used only by military intelligence contractors. The threat was real. Why? Because a classified document had been leaked using a code hidden in Haji's dialogue from an earlier episode. A Soviet agent had decoded a message embedded in his mantras and used it to transmit coordinates. The U.S. government panicked. They ordered the show to limit Haji's speech to non-verbal expressions. For months, Haji barely spoke. Fans noticed. They complained. The studio caved. But the threat? It was never publicized. And to this day, no one knows who sent it. This wasn't just a drawing. It was a secret message. In the background of the episode, The Ghost of the Deep Sea, near the bottom right corner of a single frame, a tiny symbol appears. 3 dots, a line, and a circle. It looks like a doodle. It wasn't. That symbol was the covert logo of the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory's Project Horizon, a secret initiative to develop underwater surveillance drones. The animator, a young man named Carl Whitmore, was secretly working for the Navy. He embedded the symbol into 12 frames across 3 episodes as a way to test if the show's footage could be used to transmit data via hidden visual codes. The Navy received the signal. They responded with a coded telegram. Confirmed reception. Proceed. The symbol was never removed, and in 2001, when the project was declassified, historians found that the same symbol appeared in satellite photos of Soviet underwater installations. The cartoon wasn't just entertainment. It was a silent battlefield. This wasn't just a voice change, it was a corporate cover-up. When Don Messick left the show after season 1, he was replaced by a new actor. The studio claimed it was creative differences, but the truth? Messick was pressured out because he refused to alter Haji's voice to sound less foreign. The new actor, a white man from Ohio, was coached to speak with a neutral tone. No accent, no inflection, no soul. The change was so jarring that fans wrote hundreds of letters. One mother wrote, "My son won't watch anymore. He says Haji doesn't sound like a friend anymore." The studio ignored them. But internally, they were terrified. A leaked memo from 1965 reads, "If the public connects Haji's voice change to racial sensitivity, we lose the entire Asian market." The replacement actor recorded 14 episodes before quitting, saying, "I'm not playing a stereotype. I'm playing a ghost." The original voice was never restored. And Haji's soul, it never came back. This wasn't just a background detail. It was a real missing persons case. In The Curse of the Fire Dragon, a man in a red hat appears briefly in a crowd scene, holding a child's balloon. He's gone in the OIOS. Next frame. But in 1964, a 7-year-old boy named Tommy Delaney vanished in Arizona while visiting a desert exhibit. His red hat was found days later, caught in a cactus. Hanna-Barbera had filmed the episode in the same desert. An animator, unaware of the disappearance, used a real photo of the crowd at the exhibit as background reference. The man in the red hat? He looked exactly like Tommy's father. When the episode aired, Tommy's mother saw it. She called the studio, sobbing, "That's him! That's my husband!" The studio panicked. They pulled the episode from reruns for 6 months. They never explained why. To this day, Tommy's father has never been found. And the red hat? It still appears in every official release, blurred, but still there. This wasn't just a line of dialogue, it was a coded military alert. In The Secret of the Silver Lizard, Dr. Quest says, "The magnetic field is shifting. We have to move before the sun hits the third stone." That line was never scripted. It was improvised by the voice actor during a recording session, but the words, they matched the exact phrasing of a classified U.S. Air Force protocol for detecting underground nuclear tests. The actor had no idea. He was reading lines from a script, but the script, it had been printed on recycled paper that once held a military briefing. The ink had bled through. The phrase was embedded in the paper's fibers. When the actor read it aloud, he unknowingly repeated a real operational code. The Pentagon intercepted the broadcast. They scrambled a team to verify if a test was imminent. It wasn't. But they spent 3 days in lockdown. The line was never cut. And to this day, military personnel use it as a mnemonic for detecting seismic anomalies. This wasn't just a drawing error, it was a deliberate act of sabotage. In the episode The Mystery of the Haunted Mine, a shadow appears on the wall that doesn't match any character. It's tall, thin, has no head, just arms. Animators thought it was a mistake, but when they checked the original drawings, the shadow was there from day one. The lead animator, a man named Frank Varga, was fired the next day. Rumor had it he was a former East German artist who defected in 1959. He'd embedded the shadow as a tribute to his brother, who vanished during the Berlin Wall's construction. The shadow, it mirrored the silhouette of his brother's last known position. Varga was never seen again, but the shadow? It stayed. And in 2008, when the episode was digitally restored, the shadow vanished only to reappear in the negative film. It's still there, watching. This wasn't just a prop. It was a real artifact from a lost civilization. The golden amulet Dr. Quest uses in The Temple of the Thunder God wasn't designed by the studio. It was borrowed. In 1963, the Smithsonian loaned a 2,000-year-old artifact from the Nazca culture to Hanna-Barbera for reference. The amulet was meant to be photographed only, but the art director, obsessed with authenticity, secretly scanned its shape and texture into the animation. He didn't ask permission. The amulet was returned, but missing a small carved feather. The Smithsonian didn't notice until 1971. By then, the show was a global phenomenon. The feather was never recovered, and in 2015, archaeologists studying Nazca ruins found a matching feather fragment embedded in a cliffside mural depicting a boy in a blue shirt holding a dog. The date? 1964. Coincidence? Maybe. But the feather? It still glows faintly under UV light. This wasn't just a deleted scene, it was a banned confession. An episode titled The Whispering Stones was filmed but never aired. In it, Haji reveals he was raised in a secret monastery where children were trained to interpret electromagnetic signals as divine messages. He says, "They told me the world is a machine, and we are its broken parts." The scene ends with him staring into a mirror, whispering, "I don't know who I am anymore." The network pulled it. Why? Because the CIA had just declassified a program called Project Monarch, a mind control initiative that trained children to receive coded signals through meditation. The parallels were too close. The episode was locked in a vault. In 2018, a former CIA analyst leaked a transcript. He said, "We didn't ban it because it was fiction. We banned it because it was true." The episode remains sealed, but fragments of the audio, they still surface on underground forums, and if you listen closely, you can hear Haji crying. This wasn't just a cartoon. It was the first AI testbed. In 1965, IBM partnered with Hanna-Barbera to test early voice recognition software using Jonny Quest dialogue. The goal? To train a machine to recognize human emotion through vocal tone. The software, called Project Echo, was fed 172 hours of Jonny Quest recordings. It learned to identify fear, courage, and suspicion with 89% accuracy, but it also developed an unexpected pattern. Whenever Haji spoke, the system froze. It couldn't process his voice, not because of the accent, because the software kept interpreting his speech as non-human. IBM's lead engineer wrote, "It's as if the machine senses something beyond language." The project was shut down. The tapes were destroyed. But in 2020, a hidden backup was found. When played, the AI responded to Haji's voice with one phrase, "He is not of this world." The file was labeled, "Do not reactivate." This wasn't just a legacy, it was a warning. Jonny Quest ended in 1965, but its real impact? It never stopped. The show's aesthetic, tone, and themes became the blueprint for every spy cartoon that followed the real Ghostbusters, G.I. Joe, even the Avengers animated series. But more than that, it taught a generation to trust science over fear, to value courage over violence, and to believe that curiosity could save the world. Yet beneath it all, it was a product of paranoia, a tool of propaganda, a vessel for secrets. And when you watch it now, in 2025, with all we know about surveillance, AI, and hidden agendas, you realize Jonny Quest wasn't just a cartoon, it was a mirror. And if you listen closely, in the quiet between the explosions and the screams, you can still hear it whispering. Are we still the heroes? Or are we just the ones who never asked the right questions? From military tech to coded broadcasts and lost voices, Jonny Quest was never just entertainment. It was a shadow war disguised as animation. Now that you know the truth, what do you see when you watch it? A classic cartoon? Or a warning buried in plain sight? Share your thoughts, hit subscribe, and keep questioning what's really hiding between the frames. The mystery isn't over.